The Palace of Versailles was commissioned by King Louis XIV and is located in Versailles, about 18 kilometers or 11 miles west of Paris. Louis XIV was also known as the Sun King, or Roi Soleil, and Louis Dieudonné, as well as Louis le Grand and Louis le Grand Monarque. Was he a great king or a tyrant? That is a matter for debate. What can be said is that 3/5 of his reign was spent in war, but during that time many new colonies cropped up in the Americas, Africa and Asia for France. Louis XIV was a great patron of the arts, and in 1666 he founded l'Académie des Sciences. After Louis died in 1715, France was in crippling debt. His opulence sowed the seeds of the French Revolution some years later. Initially a hunting lodge of King Louis XIII, Louis XIV, his son, transformed it into a palace and moved the seat of his court and government to Versailles, making the palace the de facto capital of France. The main building campaigns transforming the initial hunting lodge into the Grand Palace took place between 1664 and 1710, lasting approximately 46 years, and the style can be described as French Baroque architecture. During the time of the French Revolution, the Palace of Versailles was largely abandoned and emptied of its contents, and the population of the surrounding city plummeted. It was not until the 1830s that meaningful repairs were made to the palace. A museum of French history was installed within it, replacing the courtiers' apartments of the southern wing. It also became famous as the location where the Treaty of Versailles took place in 1919, which would impose harsh terms on Germany and ultimately be used by the Nazis as a pretext to start World War II. Between 1925 and 1928, the American philanthropist and multimillionaire John D. Rockefeller Jr. gave $2.2 million approximately, the equivalent of about $38 million in 2024, to restore and refurbish the palace. The palace and park were designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1979 for its importance as the centre of power, art and science in France during the 17th and 18th centuries. The palace is now owned by the government of France. 15 million people visit per year, making it one of the most popular tourist attractions in the world. In 2003, a new restoration initiative, the Grand Versailles Project, was started, which began with the replanting of the gardens, which had lost over 10,000 trees during Cyclone Lothar on the 26th of December 1999. One part of the initiative, the restoration of the Hall of Mirrors, was completed in 2006. Another major project was the further restoration of the backstage areas of the Royal Opera of Versailles from 2007 to 2009. If you enjoyed watching the series Marie Antoinette, made from 2022 to 2023, well, this was actually filmed at the Palace of Versailles, with Versailles Mondays being the designated days for filming inside the palace when it was closed to the public. It's a superb period drama, a wonderful series, and I highly recommend you watch it. I've been watching it on the BBC iPlayer. Several renowned musicians were active in or visited Versailles, including Jean-Baptiste Lully, François Couperin, Robert de Vizet, Joseph Bodin de Bols-Mortier, and the young Mozart. Mozart, along with his father Leopold and sister Nannerl, spent 16 days at Versailles during their European tour in 1763 to 1764. Lully was appointed Master of the King's Music in 1661, and François Couperin was an organist at the Chapelle Royale. Also worth a mention is Les 24 Violons du Roi, or the Versailles Orchestra from 1626 to 1761, the 24 violins of the king. More than any other ensemble at court, the 24 Violons, or Grande Bande as they were known, embodied the magnificence of royal ceremonies and the extraordinaire status of its king. In 1626, Louis XIII officially declared the orchestra an autonomous body. Their prestige reached new heights when Jean-Baptiste Lully became their director in 1653. They were the mainstay at all official events until their dissolution by decree in 1761. And so several prominent violinists played at Versailles, notably as part of Les 24 Violons du Roi, or 24 violins of the king, a prestigious court orchestra. Some of the notable violinists associated with Versailles include Jean-Baptiste Lully, Jacques Aubert, Jean-Ferry Rebel and his son François Rebel, Joseph Bologne, Théotime Langlois de Swart. Other violinists like Leclerc, Mondanville and d'Auvergne broadened the scope of orchestral virtuosity, influenced by Italian composers like Vivaldi and Locatelli. Jean-Marie Leclerc was born at Lyon in 1697. He was first a dancer and ballet master at Turin. There he studied the violin with Giovanni Battista Somis, himself a pupil of Corelli. At Paris, Leclerc made his debut at the Concert Spirituel in 1728. He scored a notable success as much for his playing as for his compositions. He performed for many years in the company of flautist Michel Blavet and violinist Jean-Pierre Guignon. Along with the latter, Leclerc was named Violon du Roi. But his stormy temperament, the difficulty of enduring his rivals, or some unknown circumstance, caused him to retire to Holland in 1737. Interestingly, Rodolphe Kreutzer, the author of the Kreutzer Etudes and dedicatee of Beethoven's Ninth Sonata for violin, Kreutzer was born in Versailles and was initially taught by his German father, who was a musician in the Royal Chapel, with later lessons from Anton Stamitz. the horses, wouldn't they? It's the nobles. So it's a 2,000 years old statue almost. Can you see it? It's a cormorant. It's a seabird.